Okay, hi guys. So from this lecture, we'll be starting off with a new concept, which is De-Broglie principle or De-Broglie concept. Okay, so let's get started. So put down the heading first. We'll be seeing De-Broglie concept. So it is related to the dual nature of moving particles, which are electrons in this case. So it is related to the dual nature of moving particles. Okay, so let's see the de Broglie's equation for moving particles. So we would have lambda equals to h upon mv, okay, where lambda is the wavelength associated with the moving electron, with moving particle. So in this case it would be electron. Okay, m is nothing but the mass of moving particle. So or electron you can say, and v is the velocity of the moving particle. H is obviously Planck's constant. Okay, so generally this is used for microscopic moving particles. Okay, this formula is used for microscopic moving particles. Okay, you can also write this formula as h upon p, where p is the momentum of the moving particle, as mv is equals to nothing but p. Okay, so now let's see an example wherein we have, so supposedly this is a positive charged nucleus and the electron is said to or supposed to have the path in the orbit as something like this. This is the orbit, so electron is supposed to have a path like this one. Okay, so this is always a constructive pattern. Okay, so this is for n equals to 4, and for n equals to 3 it would be, so let me draw it clearly. For n equals to 4, for n equals to 4 it would be something like this. Okay, and for n equals to 3 it would be something like this would be for n equals to 3. Okay, so these are constructive patterns. So this is the path or the trajectory of the moving electron. Okay, so I have drawn it this one too vaguely, but you can draw it something like this also. Okay, so it can't be a destructive pattern like this. These were all constructive patterns, but it cannot be a destructive pattern like this. This is a destructive pattern. Okay, so it cannot be a destructive pattern. Okay, so electrons can revolve only in those orbits where lambda is an integral multiple of circumference of orbits. Okay, so in other words we can also write that if n is not a integral value, electron cannot revolve. And let me write down the first statement. So it is electron can revolve only in those orbits where lambda is an integral multiple of lambda, or wavelength is in integral multiple of circumference of orbits. Okay, so we are just writing that 2 pi r should be equals to n lambda. Okay, so this is the circumference of the orbit with the radius r, and only integral multiples of lambda can be there for s2 electron to revolve in those orbits. Okay, so this is as per De-Broglie. Okay, so now combining the two equations, first we saw h equals to h upon mv, and second we have 2 pi r equals to n pi n lambda rather. So just equate the two equations. So we have lambda as 2 pi r upon n from the second equation. It should be equal to h upon mv. So we can write that mvr should be equal to nh upon 2 pi. mvr is nothing but angular momentum. Okay, so we have seen in the past lecture that kinetic energy equals to half mv square. Okay, so or we can also write kinetic energy in terms of momentum, which is p square upon 2m. So if we substitute for the cross verification, p is nothing but mv and 2m. So this is m square v square upon 2m, which is nothing but half mv square. Okay, so just remember these two formulas for calculation of kinetic energy. Okay, now for a charged particle, we can have kinetic energy as ev. Okay, electron volts. So therefore, as kinetic energy is 2m, rather kinetic energy is, or rather we can say the momentum square is 2m into energy, kinetic energy, and kinetic energy can be for a charged particle as ev. So we can write p square is equals to 2m ev, or we can also write therefore p equals to root of 2m ev. Okay, so now again substituting back the value of p in the original equation, which was lambda equals to h upon p. Okay, so again substituting the value of momentum in the lambda's equation, so we'll be getting lambda equals to h upon root of 2m ev. Okay, so just remember this formula, or rather this formulae. Okay, so please remember that this is only for electron. Okay, so rather this is generic, but what I am actually writing now should be only for electrons, so I'm not confusing it here. So let me remove it from here. This is generic for any moving particle. Okay, now for electron we can actually simplify this equation by putting the values of m, e and h. So for electron, just remember that lambda is root of 150 upon velocity, oh not velocity, volt, and this is in amperes. Okay, so just remember this form. For electron, lambda equals to 150 upon v ampere. Okay, so with this we come to the end of this lecture. In the next lecture we'll be seeing division and Gedmer experiment.